The letter from Hearthstone Loan Servicing felt heavy in my hand, the kind of high-quality stationery reserved for congratulations. I tore it open, expecting a rate adjustment or a tax update. Instead, 3 words in bold block letters stopped my heart. Paid in full. A wave of cold prickled down my neck. I still owed nearly $200,000 on this house. This wasn't a clerical error or a miracle. It was the first tug of a noose. The afternoon sun sliced through the blinds of my kitchen window, illuminating dust motes that danced in the stagnant air of Briar Glen. It was a Tuesday, quiet in that specific, heavy way the suburbs get when everyone is at work or school. I stood by the granite island, the rest of my mail scattered across the cool surface like debris from a life I was barely managing to keep organized. A utility bill, a flyer for a landscaping service I could not afford, a pre-screened credit card offer, and then the envelope from Hearthstone Loan Servicing. It felt different in my hand, thicker. The paper stock was heavier than the usual flimsy notices about escrow adjustments or tax updates. I slid my thumb under the flap, expecting the mundane disappointment of a rate increase. Instead, I pulled out a single sheet of cream-colored paper, tri-folded with military precision. The words at the top were bold, capitalized, and impossible to misunderstand. Paid in full. I stared at the paper. My brain refused to process the syntax. I read it again, my lips moving silently around the shapes of the letters. Dear Nora Watson, we are pleased to inform you that your mortgage loan has been satisfied in full. Enclosed, please find confirmation of your zero balance. A laugh bubbled up in my throat, dry and jagged. It had to be a joke, a glitch in some server farm 3 states away. I owed $186,000 on this house. I had 22 years left on a 30-year fixed-rate note. People like me, single women working mid-level administrative jobs in marketing, did not just accidentally pay off their houses. I set the letter down on the counter. My fingers were trembling. A normal person might have felt a surge of adrenaline, a lottery winner type of hope, but I did not feel hope. I felt a cold, oily dread seep into the pit of my stomach. In my experience, when the universe handed you something too good to be true, it was usually a precursor to it taking something vital away. I grabbed my laptop from the living room, opening it before I even sat down. My fingers fumbled over the password, mistyping it twice before I finally got in. I navigated to the Hearthstone portal, the familiar blue and gray interface loading agonizingly slow. I clicked on loan details, principal balance, $0 and 0 cents. I blinked, waiting for the numbers to rearrange themselves into reality. They stayed at 0. I clicked on transaction history. There it was. Dated 3 days ago, a single line item labeled wire transfer, external payoff. The amount was exactly $186,422.12. It looked clean. That was the thing that terrified me the most. There were no error codes, no pending flags, no red exclamation points indicating a system review. It looked like a standard, boring, authorized transaction. It looked like I had simply reached into a bank account I did not possess, pulled out a fortune, and cleared my debt. My breath hitched. I pushed the chair back and stood up, pacing the small length of the kitchen. Who pays off a stranger's mortgage? Nobody. Which meant this wasn't a stranger. I grabbed my phone and dialed the customer service number on the letterhead. The automated system took 5 minutes of my life, forcing me to speak my social security number and verify my mother's maiden name, a prompt that made me flinch, before I was finally connected to a human being. "This is David," the voice said. "How can I help you today?" "Ms. Watson? I need to report an error." I said. My voice sounded thin, brittle in the empty kitchen. "I received a notice saying my mortgage is paid off. That is a mistake. I did not pay it off." There was a tapping of keys on the other end. A long, stretching silence. "Well, ma'am, I am looking at the account right now," David said, his tone cheerful and unbothered. "It shows a full payoff posted on Friday via wire transfer. Congratulations are in order." "No," I said, gripping the phone tighter. "You do not understand. I do not have that kind of money. Where did the wire come from? Let me check the source details for you. I waited, staring at the magnetic calendar on my fridge. It was still turned to last month. I had been too tired to flip the page. It looks like the disbursement came from an escrow account. David said, Juniper Title and Escrow. Juniper Title. The name sounded vaguely familiar. Part of the landscape of generic business names that populated the strip malls of Caldwell County. Why would a title company pay off my loan? I asked. I am not selling my house. I am not refinancing. Usually, that happens when a property is sold or refinanced, David said, his voice taking on a slightly patronizing edge, as if explaining gravity to a toddler. Or if you came into some funds and used an escrow service to handle the transaction. We received the funds along with the borrower's signed payoff authorization. Everything looks standard on our end. The borrower's signed payoff authorization. I felt the blood drain from my face. I did not sign anything. I said, my voice dropping to a whisper, Ms. Watson, we have the document on file. It was submitted through the secure portal by the title agent. If you have questions about the source of funds, you might want to contact Juniper Title directly. But from our perspective, the debt is satisfied. We will be mailing the lien release to the county recorder within 30 days. I hung up without saying goodbye. My hands were shaking so badly, I had to lean against the counter to steady myself. Signed payoff authorization. Someone had used my name. Someone had impersonated me. I looked at the clock. It was 4 p.m. Juniper Title and Escrow would be open until 5. I did not change out of my work clothes. I grabbed my purse, checked that I had the letter, and marched out the door. The heat of the afternoon hit me like a physical blow, humid and oppressive. I got into my sedan, the leather seats scorching my legs, and backed out of the driveway as I drove through Briar Glen. The neighborhood looked different. Usually, I found comfort in the manicured lawns and the uniform mailboxes. Today, they looked like a facade. The world felt tilted, as if the gravity had shifted 5 degrees to the left. Juniper Title and Escrow was located in a beige office park near the highway, sandwiched between a dentist's office and a high-end dog grooming salon. I parked the car and walked inside, the air conditioning instantly freezing the sweat on my back. The lobby was aggressively neutral. Gray carpet, gray chairs, abstract art that looked like spilled coffee. A young woman sat behind the reception desk, typing on an ergonomic keyboard. She looked up as I approached, her smile practiced and bright. "Can I help you?" she asked. "I am Nora Watson." I said, "I need to see the file for my property. My mortgage was paid off through this office 3 days ago, and I did not authorize it." The receptionist's smile faltered for a fraction of a second before reassembling itself. "Do you have an appointment?" she asked. "No," I said, "I do not need an appointment. I need to know who sent you $200,000 in my name. Let me see if an escrow officer is available," she said. She picked up her phone and whispered something I could not hear. I stood there, arms crossed, watching her. I felt like a vibrating wire. A door opened down the hall, and a man in a blue button-down shirt stuck his head out, looked at me, and then withdrew, closing the door firmly. The receptionist hung up and turned back to me. "I am sorry. Ms. Watson," she said. "The escrow officer, Mr. Vance, is in a closing right now, and it appears that file has already been archived." "Archived?" I asked. "It happened Friday. How can it be archived?" "We move fast here," she said, her voice tight. "If you want to request copies of the documents, you will need to fill out a records request form. It usually takes 48 hours to process." I slammed my hand down on the counter. It wasn't a loud noise, but it was sudden enough that she flinched. "I am not waiting 48 hours. I said, "Someone forged my signature. This is fraud. I want to see the payoff authorization. Now." The receptionist looked around the empty lobby, clearly assessing whether I was a danger. Then, her eyes softened with a strange, flickering recognition. "Oh," she said. "Wait, Watson?" "Yes." I said, "Nora Watson." She lowered her voice, leaning slightly over the tall counter. You do not need to worry about the copies, she said. Your mom already picked them up this morning. The world stopped. The hum of the refrigerator in the break room, the sound of typing, the distant traffic outside. It all vanished into a high-pitched ringing in my ears. My mother? I asked. Yes, the receptionist said. Elaine, she was here around 10. She said she wanted to surprise you with the paperwork. She is such a sweet lady. She brought us bagels. The receptionist paused, her face falling as she registered the look of absolute horror on my face. She pulled back, her professional mask slamming back into place. She stammered, I assume she gave them to you, if she did not. I cannot give them to you again without the form. Privacy laws. I stared at her. The absurdity of it choked me. She had given my private financial documents to my mother because she brought bagels. But she was citing privacy laws to keep me from seeing them. I turned around and walked out. I could not breathe in that room. The drive home was a blur. I ran a stop sign. I merged onto the highway without looking. All I could see was Elaine's face. Elaine, who had always told me I was too fragile to handle the real world. Elaine, who had insisted on being on my checking account until I was 26 because she wanted to make sure I did not bounce checks. Elaine, who suffocated me with a pillow made of concern and called it love. When I pulled into my driveway, her car was already there, a pristine white SUV, parked slightly crooked, blocking the path to my garage. She had a key. Of course she had a key. I had asked for it back 6 months ago, and she had laughed, saying, "Don't be silly." Nora, what if there is an emergency? I turned off the ignition and sat in the silence for a moment. My heart was hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. I told myself to be calm. I told myself there was an explanation. Maybe she had won the lottery. Maybe a distant relative I never knew about had died. I got out of the car. The front door was unlocked. "Mom?" I called out, stepping into the entryway. "Nora!" Her voice floated from the kitchen, bright and airy. "You are home early." I walked into the kitchen. She was unpacking grocery bags on the island, right where I had left the Hearthstone letter. The letter was gone. In its place was a carton of organic strawberries, a loaf of sourdough bread, and a bottle of expensive wine. Elaine Watson looked younger than her 60 years. She was trim, dressed in linen pants and a floral blouse, her hair a perfect helmet of blonde highlights. She looked up at me and beamed, her eyes crinkling at the corners. "I brought dinner," she said. "I thought we could celebrate." "Celebrate what?" I asked. My voice was steady, but it took every ounce of my willpower to keep it that way. She wiped her hands on a tea towel and leaned against the counter, her expression shifting to one of theatrical excitement. "The house? Nora!" she said. "It is done. You are free." She gestured to the air as if she had just performed a magic trick. "I saw the letter." I said, "I went to the title company. They said you paid it off." "I did." She said. She walked over and tried to hug me, but I took a step back. She froze, looking hurt. "Nora, do not look at me like that," she said. "It is a gift, a surprise." "A $200,000 surprise?" I asked. "Where did you get that kind of money?" "Mom? You are a retired teacher." She waved her hand dismissively. "I have been saving," she said, "and there was a family inheritance fund from your great-aunt Ida. It finally matured. I wanted to use it to help you. Great-aunt Ida died before I was born. I had never heard of a trust fund." "You helped me?" I asked. "By paying off my mortgage without telling me?" "I wanted you to finally breathe," she said, her voice dropping to that serious, hushed tone she used when she was rewriting history. "You have been so stressed lately, worrying about your job, worrying about bills. I could see it in your face. I wanted to take the burden away. I am only trying to keep this family safe." I looked at the groceries, the wine. It was all a set piece. She was playing the benevolent matriarch. The title company said there was a signed payoff authorization. I said, "They said I signed it." Elaine sighed. a sound of long-suffering patience. She reached into her oversized purse, which was sitting on one of the bar stools. She pulled out a folder. "I handled the paperwork," she said. "You know how you get with forms. You get overwhelmed. I didn't want to burden you with the administrative nonsense." She opened the folder and slid a piece of paper toward me across the granite. It was a photocopy of a document titled Borrower Payoff Authorization. At the bottom of the page was a signature, Nora Watson. I stared at it. The world seemed to narrow down to that ink. It looked like my signature. At a glance, anyone would say it was mine. The capital N had the right height. The W had the sharp peak I always used. But it was wrong. The loops were too careful. My signature was a hurried scrawl, a byproduct of signing endless purchase orders at work. This signature was deliberate. It had been drawn, not written. The slant was too upright. Lacking the forward momentum of my natural hand, it was the uncanny valley of handwriting. It was a mask wearing my face. "You forged my signature," I said. I did not look up. Elaine laughed. A nervous, tinkling sound. "Forge is such an ugly word." "Nora, I signed it on your behalf. As your mother, it is barely different from when I signed your permission slips for field trips. I am 33 years old." I said, "I am not going on a field trip. You committed a felony." Her face hardened. The sunshine vanished, replaced by the steel I knew lay beneath the surface. "Do not be dramatic," she said sharply. "I just gave you a house, free and clear. Most daughters would be on their knees thanking me. Instead, you are standing there picking apart the penmanship." She closed the distance between us, grabbing my hands. Her skin was cool. "I did this for you," she whispered, "so no one can ever take this roof from over your head. You are safe now. Why can't you just accept that I love you?" I pulled my hands away. "I want you to leave," I said. "Nora, leave. Mom, take the groceries. Take the wine. Just go." She stared at me for a long moment, her eyes searching mine for a crack in the armor. When she didn't find one, she sniffed, picked up her purse, and left the groceries exactly where they were. "You will see," she said as she walked to the door. "You will sleep better tonight. You will thank me in the morning." The door clicked shut. I listened to her car start, back out, and drive away. I did not sleep better. I stood in the kitchen for a long time, staring at the forged signature. The sun went down, casting long shadows across the floor. I didn't turn on the lights. Eventually, I moved. I threw the strawberries in the trash. I poured the wine down the sink. It felt petty, but I needed to purge her presence from the room. I went back to my laptop. The screen was still glowing in the dark living room. I navigated away from the mortgage site and opened the browser tab for the Caldwell County Recorder's Office. I had used this site when I bought the house 5 years ago, obsessively checking to make sure the deed was recorded correctly. I typed in my parcel number. The search wheel spun. A list of documents populated the screen. At the bottom, the original deed from 5 years ago. Above it, the mortgage I had supposedly just paid off. And then, at the very top, a new entry, recorded yesterday. Instrument type, warranty deed, grantor, Nora Watson. Status, recorded. My breath caught in my throat. A warranty deed wasn't a payoff document. A payoff was a reconveyance or a satisfaction of mortgage. A warranty deed was used to transfer ownership. I hadn't just paid off the house, I had sold it, or given it away. I clicked on the document image, but since it was after business hours and I didn't have a subscription, I could only see the index information. I couldn't see who the grantee was. I couldn't see who I had transferred the property to, but I knew. The knowledge sat in my gut like a stone. I grabbed my phone and scrolled until I found Maya's name. I hit call. She answered on the second ring. I could hear the background noise of a television and her kids arguing over a game. "Hey, lady," Maya said. "What's up?" "I think my mom stole my house." I said. The background noise on her end seemed to drop away. "What?" Maya asked. "Nora, slow down. What are you talking about?" I told her everything. The letter, the zero balance, the visit to Juniper, the forgery, and now, The deed on the county website. Okay, Maya said, her voice dropping into her professional nurse mode. Calm, directed, urgent. Listen to me. You are spiraling. I can hear it in your voice. You need to breathe. I can't breathe, I said. She forged my name, Maya. She looked me in the eye and said she was keeping me safe. Okay, Maya said. Here is what we are going to do. You are not going to talk to her again tonight. Do not text her. Do not answer her calls. You are going to go to the recorder's office the second they open tomorrow morning. You need to see that deed with your own eyes. You need to see who is listed as the new owner. It is her, I said. I know it is her. Probably. Maya agreed. But you need proof. And Nora? Yeah? Stop talking about this in the house. Why? I asked. Because if she has keys, and she has been accessing your mail, and she is forging documents. Maya paused. Just go outside if you are going to talk to me, or come over here. Do not let her overhear your strategy. I looked around the living room. The shadows suddenly looked like they had ears. The house, my sanctuary, felt compromised. I am scared. Maya, I whispered. I sound paranoid. Don't I? No, Maya said. You sound like someone who just realized the call is coming from inside the house. Get the document. Nora. Then we figure out how to fight. We hung up. I sat on my couch in the dark. The silence of the suburbs usually felt peaceful to me. Tonight, it felt heavy, suffocating. I looked at the walls I had painted sage green, the bookshelf I had assembled myself, the floorboards that creaked in the hallway. I had worked so hard for this place. I had eaten ramen for 3 years to save the down payment. I had fought for my credit score. This 4-bedroom colonial was the only thing in my life that was entirely mine. And now, according to the state of New York, it might not be. I replayed the conversation with Elaine. I did what you wouldn't. I am only trying to keep this family safe. Safe from what? The only danger I had ever faced was her need to control every breath I took. She didn't want me to be safe. She wanted me to be contained. I checked the locks on the front door. I checked the back door. I wedged a chair under the handle of the door leading to the garage, just in case she decided to use her key in the middle of the night. I went upstairs to my bedroom, but I didn't get under the covers. I lay on top of the duvet, fully dressed, clutching my phone. The house creaked as it cooled down from the heat of the day. Every pop and groan made me jump. I realized then that the theft wasn't just about the equity or the title. She had stolen the feeling of home. She had turned my walls into paper and my lock into a suggestion. I closed my eyes, but I didn't sleep. I just lay there, waiting for the sun to rise, waiting to see just how much of my life she had signed away. The Caldwell County Recorder's Office smelled of floor wax and old dust, a specific municipal scent that always reminded me of waiting in line at the DMV. It was 10 in the morning on a Wednesday. I had called in sick to work, my voice shaking just enough on the phone to sound convincing. Though the nausea rolling in my gut was real enough, I stood at the counter, watching the clerk type on a keyboard that looked like it had survived the 90s. Her name tag read, Patricia, and she had the weary, efficient demeanor of someone who had seen every possible variation of property dispute. Here it is, Patricia said, sliding a piece of paper across the laminate counter. Certified copy. That will be $4 per page. I handed her my debit card without looking. My eyes were locked on the document. It was titled, Warranty Deed. The text was dense, full of legal jargon about tracts and parcels and appurtenances. But the bold names at the top told the only story that mattered. Grantor, Nora Watson, Grantee, Elaine Watson. I felt the blood drain from my face, pooling somewhere in my feet. It was done. It was recorded, in the eyes of the county, the state, and the world. I no longer owned my home. I read the consideration line, for the sum of $10 and other valuable consideration, $10. My mother had transferred my biggest asset, the home I had scraped and saved and sacrificed for, to herself for the price of a fast food lunch. I looked down at the signature block. There it was again, that careful, uncanny simulation of my name. It sat above the black line, looking mocking in its precision, and right next to it was the notary seal, stamped in heavy purple ink, subscribed and sworn to before me this 12th day of May. I squinted at the notary's signature, Kendra Pike. The name sparked a memory, sharp and immediate. Kendra Pike. She wasn't a stranger at a bank. She wasn't a random employee at a shipping store. Kendra was a woman in her late 40s with frizzy red hair who used to help organize the charity auctions at the Briar Glen Community Club. My mother was the president of that club for 6 years running. I remembered Kendra pouring punch at the spring mixer, laughing at my mother's jokes, looking at Elaine with that desperate, eager-to-please expression that so many of my mother's friends wore. Kendra Pike had notarized a signature she had to know was fake, or worse. She had sat there while my mother signed my name and stamped it anyway, trading a felony for social capital. "Is there a problem, hun?" Patricia asked, her voice softening as she took in my pale face. "This is a forgery," I said. My voice sounded distant, like it was coming from underwater. "I did not sign this. I was at work on May 12th. Patricia's expression shifted from bored to guarded. She pulled the document back slightly, though I still had my hand on it. "We just record what is submitted," she said, reciting what was clearly a prepared script. "We do not verify the validity of the content. If you believe there is fraud, you need to contact the sheriff's department or an attorney. We cannot remove a recorded instrument." "I know," I said. I was not angry at her. She was just a mechanism in the machine. "I just need the copy." I took the paper, my fingers leaving damp smudges on the edges. I walked out of the building into the blinding sunshine, feeling like I was carrying a grenade. The drive to the law office of Hartwell and Soren was a blur of autopilot turns and red lights. Maya had texted me the recommendation that morning. Lena Hartwell. She had written, "She is expensive, but she eats sharks for breakfast. Go to her." The firm was located in a restored brick building in the historic district, the kind of place that signaled competence and high retainers. I sat in the waiting room for 10 minutes, my leg bouncing uncontrollably, until a paralegal led me back. Lena Hartwell was not what I expected. I had pictured someone loud and aggressive. Instead, Lena was small, with steel gray hair cut in a sharp bob and glasses that magnified her intense, dark eyes. She sat behind a desk that was completely clear of paper, save for a single yellow legal pad. "Sit down, Nora," she said. "Maya told me the basics. Show me the deed." I handed it to her. She put on her glasses and read it in silence. She didn't gasp. She didn't shake her head. She just scanned the lines with a terrifying focus, her eyes darting from the grantor to the grantee, then to the notary stamp. "Standard form," she said, her voice dry, professionally prepared. This was not downloaded off the internet. Someone knew what they were doing. She looked up at me. "You are telling me you did not sign this?" "I absolutely did not." I said, "I was at a regional training seminar in Columbus that day. I have the hotel receipts. I have the mileage log." "Good," Lena said. "Keep those. They are your shield." She leaned back, folding her hands over the deed. "Here is the hard truth. Nora, in the eyes of the law, right now, this house belongs to Elaine Watson. A recorded deed acts as the truth until a court says otherwise. The burden is not on her to prove she bought it. The burden is on you to prove she stole it." I felt a wave of nausea. "But it is fraud." I said, "It is obvious. It is obvious to you." Lena corrected, "To the law. It is a duly notarized document. To unwind this, we have to file a civil lawsuit to quiet title. We have to prove the signature is forged. We have to depose the notary. And while we are doing that, your mother legally has the right to encumber the property, sell it, or evict you." "Evict me?" I choked out the words. "It is her house on paper," Lena said. "She can file an unlawful detainer action tomorrow if she wants to." The room seemed to tilt. I gripped the arms of the leather chair. "So what do?" I asked. "We go on the offensive," Lena said. "Immediately." She picked up a pen and began writing a list on the yellow pad, her handwriting sharp and jagged. "First, we file a fraud affidavit with the county recorder. It flags the chain of title so she cannot easily sell it to an unsuspecting third party. Second, we place a property alert on the parcel number so we get notified if any other documents are recorded. Third, I am going to order a full title report. If she transferred the deed, she might have done it to secure a loan. We need to know if there are new liens. She looked up, her gaze piercing. And fourth, I am sending a preservation letter to Juniper Title and Escrow. I want every email, every call log, every internal note, and every scan connected to this file. If they facilitated this, they are liable. Title companies do not like to be liable. They will panic. And when they panic, they make mistakes. She ripped the page off the pad and handed it to me. This is going to get ugly. Nora, she said quietly, this is your mother. If we pursue this, you are accusing her of multiple felonies, grand larceny, forgery, wire fraud. There is no version of this where you get your house back and Sunday dinner stays pleasant. Are you ready for that? I thought about the paid in full letter. I thought about the loops in the signature that were too perfect. I thought about Elaine standing in my kitchen, holding a bag of groceries and telling me she was saving me. She took my home. Lena, I said, she did not just borrow money. She erased me from the title. Lena nodded, a grim, satisfied look on her face. Good, she said. Then let's get to work. I left the office an hour later with a retainer agreement signed and a lighter bank account. But for the first time in 24 hours, I felt like I had a weapon. When I pulled into my driveway, the sun was beginning to dip lower, casting long golden shadows across the lawn. My heart hammered against my ribs when I saw the white SUV parked at the curb. She was here. I parked and walked up the driveway. Elaine was sitting on my front porch swing, gently rocking back and forth. She was wearing a casual cardigan and holding a mug of tea, my mug. From my cabinet, she looked for all the world like the lady of the manor enjoying a quiet evening. She smiled when she saw me, but the smile didn't reach her eyes. It was tight, strained around the edges. You were not at work today, she said. Her tone was conversational, but the accusation was underneath it. I called your office. They said you were out sick. I stopped at the bottom of the porch steps. I did not want to get closer to her. I was busy. I said, busy doing what? She asked. I held up the envelope from the county recorder's office. I went to the county. Mom, I saw the deed. The rocking stopped. Elaine set the mug down on the small side table. She didn't look guilty. She looked disappointed, like I had failed a test she hadn't told me I was taking. I told you I handled it, she said. Why do you have to go digging around? Why can't you just accept a good thing? Transferring the house to your name is not a good thing for me. I said, it is theft. You bought my house for $10. It is a formality, she snapped, her voice rising. It is for your protection. Protection from what? I demanded. I pay my bills. I have a savings account. I am not a child. I heard about the layoffs. Nora, she said. The words hung in the air between us. What? I asked. At your company, she said. I heard they are downsizing the marketing department next quarter. I know you. If you lose your job, you will spiral. You will stop paying the mortgage. You will lose the equity. I secured the asset. That is what families do. We protect each other's assets. I stared at her. There had been rumors of restructuring at work. Vague whispers in the break room. But nothing concrete. Nothing public. How could you possibly know that? I asked. I have friends. She said vaguely, people talk. The point is, you were walking into a disaster and you did not even know it. I stepped in. And the signature? I asked. You just decided to become me? You were so stressed, she said, her voice shifting into that slippery gaslighting register I knew so well. It was soft, pitying. You barely remember half the things you do lately. You came over for dinner 2 weeks ago, remember? We had wine. We talked about your finances. You agreed this was the best path. You might not remember signing the papers, Nora, but you were very relieved at the time. My stomach twisted. I had gone to dinner 2 weeks ago. We had wine. I remembered feeling groggy afterwards. crashing on her guest bed for an hour before driving home. No, I said. I shook my head, fighting the fog she was trying to summon. No, that did not happen. I did not sign a deed. I did not sign a payoff authorization. You are lying to me. Elaine stood up. She towered over me from the porch, her face hard and cold. The mask of the concerned mother vanished, revealing the iron underneath. I did what you wouldn't, she said, her voice low and venomous. You are too soft. Nora, you let the world walk all over you. This house represents the bulk of our family's wealth. I was not going to let you squander it because you are too proud to ask for help. This house stays in the family. It is my house, I said, my voice trembling. It is in my name, she said, which makes it mine. And I will manage it better than you ever could. She picked up her purse and brushed past me, smelling of lavender and betrayal. We will discuss the rent arrangement later. She said over her shoulder, once you have calmed down. She got into her car and drove away, leaving me standing in the driveway, shaking with a rage so pure it felt like heat. Rent arrangement. She was going to charge me rent to live in the home I had bought. I turned to go inside, but a voice called out from the yard next door. Nora? I jumped. It was Mr. Halden, my neighbor to the left. He was standing by the hedge, holding a pair of gardening shears. He looked embarrassed, like he had witnessed a fight he wasn't supposed to see. I am sorry. Mr. Halden, I said, wiping my face. We were just having a disagreement. He hesitated, then walked closer to the property line. I don't mean to pry, he said, but is everything okay with your mail? My mail? I asked. Yeah, he said. I saw a courier drop off a thick envelope last week. FedEx, I think, but you weren't home. Your mom was here. She signed for it. He pointed to the curb. Her car was parked right there. She was waiting for him. And then a couple days later, I saw her taking mail out of your box. I figured you asked her to pick it up. But hearing you two just now, the pieces clicked together with a sickening snap. The paid-in-full letter, the notification from the title company, the deed. I hadn't seen them because she had been intercepting them. She knew my schedule. She knew when the mail carrier came. She had been camped out, sanitizing my reality before I could even see it. Thank you, Mr. Halden, I said. That is very helpful. I walked into my house and locked the door. I threw the deadbolt. Then I wedged a chair under the knob again. It felt pathetic. A wooden chair against a legal deed. But it was all I had. I went straight to my home office. It was a small room off the kitchen where I kept my filing cabinet. I needed to see what else she had access to. I pulled open the drawer labeled Personal Documents. My passport was there, my social security card. But the folder labeled Vital Records felt light. I opened it. My birth certificate was there. But it was sitting loose, not in the plastic sleeve I always kept it in. Someone had taken it out. Someone had made a copy, as I shifted the folder. Something fell out from behind the birth certificate. It was a small, heavy card. Glossy black cardstock with gold-embossed lettering. Meridian Family Capital, Gavin Roque, Senior Advisor, Wealth Stewardship Legacy Planning. I turned the card over. On the back, handwritten in a script that was definitely not my mother's, was a date and time. Tuesday, 2 p.m. Bring the deed. I had never heard of Meridian Family Capital. I had certainly never contacted a wealth stewardship firm. My assets consisted of a 401k and this house. I was not their target demographic, but my mother apparently was. Or rather, she was pretending to be, using my house as the poker chip. I sat down on the floor, surrounded by my scattered files. The house was silent, but it felt crowded now. Ghosts of her presence were everywhere. Her hand in my mailbox, her signature on my deed, her friends stamping my destruction. I looked at the business card again. Gavin Roque. Lena had said we needed to prove fraud. She had said it would get ugly. I pulled my laptop onto my lap and opened a new browser window. I typed Meridian Family Capital Gavin Roque into the search bar. His face popped up. Handsome, silver-haired, trustworthy, the kind of man who played golf on Tuesdays and ruined lives on Fridays. I felt a cold resolve settle over me, replacing the panic. I was done crying. I was done asking her for explanations she would never give. She had told me I was too soft. She had told me she did what I wouldn't. She was right. I wouldn't rob my own daughter. I wouldn't gaslight her. But she was wrong about me being soft. I picked up my phone and took a picture of the business card. Then I texted it to Lena. I found a name. I typed, Gavin Roque, Meridian Family Capital. I think he helped her. I stood up and put the files back. But I didn't organize them. I didn't care about neatness anymore. I walked to the kitchen and looked at the spot where she had stood earlier. Telling me she was protecting the family, I am going to find out everything. I said to the empty room. My voice was steady. I would pull every record. I would track down every wire transfer. I would talk to this Gavin Roque, and I would find the notary, Kendra Pike. I didn't care if it meant exposing my mother as a criminal. I didn't care if it meant destroying the illusion of our family. She had started this war to keep the house in the family. I was going to end it by showing her exactly what it cost to betray one. I went to the fridge, took out a bottle of water, and sat down at the table to wait for the sun to go down. Tomorrow, I wasn't going to be the confused daughter. Tomorrow, I was going to be the plaintiff. The fluorescent lights of Lena Hartwell's conference room hummed with a low, electric buzz that seemed to vibrate directly against my skull. On the polished mahogany table lay a stack of papers about an inch thick, the preliminary title report Lena had ordered only 24 hours ago. Lena sat across from me, her face unreadable, her hands clasped over a file folder. She did not look like a woman who was about to deliver good news. "You need to look at this, Nora," she said. Her voice was devoid of the "I told you so" tone I had feared. Instead, it carried a heavy, clinical gravity. She slid the report toward me, flipping it open to a page marked with a yellow sticky note. I looked down. The text was dense, a wall of legal descriptions and recording dates, but Lena's finger pointed to a specific entry near the bottom. Item 4, Deed of Trust/Home Equity, Line of Credit. Grantor, Elaine Watson, Beneficiary, Stonebridge Community Bank. Amount, $150,000. Recorded, May 15th. I stared at the numbers. They swam before my eyes, refusing to settle into a coherent reality. "What is this?" I asked. The words felt thick in my mouth. "It is a HELOC," Lena said. "A home equity line of credit. 3 days after the warranty deed transferred the house to your mother's name, she took out a loan against the property." I felt the blood drain from my face. The room seemed to tilt sideways. "But the letter," I stammered. "The letter from Hearthstone. It said paid in full. She paid off my mortgage." Lena nodded slowly. "She did, and now we know why. She could not take out a new loan in her name while your old mortgage was still attached to the title. She had to clear the deck." I sat back in the leather chair. The breath punched out of me. "It wasn't a gift," I whispered. The realization hit me with the force of a physical blow, nausea rising in my throat. The groceries, the wine, the surprise. It wasn't generosity. It was a reset button. She paid off $186,000 just to borrow $150,000 back, I asked. That doesn't make sense. She lost money. She accessed liquidity, Lena corrected. She used an inheritance, cash that was likely sitting in a trust or a low-interest account, to pay off your debt. Then, she immediately leveraged the house to pull cash back out. But now, that debt is in her name, controlled by her, and the cash from the HELOC is hers to use however she wants. And the house is the collateral. If she defaults, the bank takes your home. I closed my eyes. The paid in full notice, which had terrified me for its implication of control, was actually far worse. It was bait. She had cleared the title so she could pawn the house to a new lender. "Who is Stonebridge Community Bank?" I asked, opening my eyes. "Small regional bank," Lena said. "Less automated than the big national chains. Easier to push paperwork through if you know the right people." I stood up. My legs felt shaky. but the nausea was hardening into something cold and sharp. I am going there, I said. Lena looked at me over the rim of her glasses. They won't talk to you. Nora, you are not on the loan. I don't care, I said. I need to see them. I need to see the people who gave my mother a mortgage on a house she stole 3 days prior. Lena sighed and closed the folder. Don't make a scene, she warned. It won't help our case. But if you can get a name, a loan officer, a manager, bring it to me. I drove to Stonebridge Community Bank in a trance. It was located in the next town over, a brick building with white pillars that tried to project old money stability. I walked into the lobby, the air conditioning hitting the sweat on my neck. It was quiet, the kind of hushed atmosphere where money is whispered about, not discussed. I approached a desk with a placard that read, Compliance Officer. A woman in her 50s sat behind it, typing. She looked up, her smile professional and guarded. Can I help you? My name is Nora Watson. I said, I am here about a loan secured by the property at 42 Briar Glen Lane. She typed something into her computer. I do not see your name on that account. Ms. Watson, she said, her tone instantly cooling. That is because the deed was forged. I said, I kept my voice level, but I could feel the tremor in my hands. My mother, Elaine Watson, took out a HELOC on my home. I want to know how she did it. The woman stopped typing. She took her hands off the keyboard and folded them on the desk. I cannot discuss a customer's account with a third party, she said. If you believe there is fraud, you need to contact law enforcement. I said, but I am asking you, how does a bank lend $150,000 on a property that was transferred 72 hours before? Did anyone check the title history? Did anyone ask why the daughter was suddenly erased from the deed? Ma'am, she said, her voice dropping an octave. You need to leave, or I will call security. I stood my ground for a second longer, staring at her, willing her to feel a fraction of the violation I felt. She didn't blink. The institution protected itself. It always did. I turned to leave. As I walked toward the heavy glass doors, a young man in a teller's uniform hurried past me, carrying a stack of deposit slips. He made eye contact, hesitated, and then fell into step beside me as we reached the vestibule. He looked around, checking to make sure the compliance officer wasn't watching. I heard you, he whispered. He didn't look at me. He kept his eyes on the parking lot. I processed the intake on that file. I froze. You did? I asked. The loan package, he said, speaking quickly. It was weird. Fast-tracked. The officer who approved it usually handles commercial stuff, not residential. Who approved it? I asked. He shook his head. I can't say. But check the attachments. There was a power of attorney in the initial packet. It looked professional, bonded paper. It authorized the mother to act for the daughter in all real estate matters. That is how they justified the quick title change. A power of attorney. I never signed a power of attorney, I whispered. The young man shrugged, pushing the door open. It looked real enough to scan. He said, Good luck. He walked away, disappearing into the heat of the parking lot, leaving me standing there with a new piece of the puzzle. A power of attorney. She hadn't just forged a deed. She had forged a document giving her permission to become me. I sat in my car for 20 minutes, staring at the steering wheel. I needed to talk to her, not to scream, not to cry. I needed her to say it. I pulled my phone out and opened the voice memo app. I tested it, watching the red waveform bounce as I spoke. Then I slid the phone into the front pocket of my blouse, the microphone facing out. I drove home. The white SUV was not there. I waited. She arrived an hour later. I watched from the living room window as she pulled into the driveway, my driveway, and gathered her purse. She walked up the path with that confident, proprietary gait that made my teeth ache. I opened the front door before she could use her key. Nora, she said, surprised. I thought you were at work. I took the day off. I said. I stepped back to let her in. We need to talk. She walked past me, setting her purse on the entryway table. I am glad you are being reasonable, she said. I have been looking at some landscaping ideas. If we are going to keep the property, we really should address that overgrown azalea bush. I said. She turned to look at me, her face settling into a mask of patient instruction. Yes, it is a family asset now. I walked into the kitchen, making sure she followed. I leaned against the counter, keeping my posture relaxed. Non-threatening, I needed her to feel safe. I needed her to talk. I went to Stonebridge Bank today, I said softly. The mask slipped. Just for a second, a flicker of genuine alarm behind the blue eyes. Why would you do that? She asked. I saw the line of credit. Mom, $150,000. She let out a breath, a short, sharp puff of air. That is for repairs, she said, and for reserves, in case you lose your job. I told you, I am building a safety net. I heard about the power of attorney. I said. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. Elaine walked over to the sink and filled a glass of water. She took a long time doing it. When she turned back, her face was composed, but her knuckles were white where she gripped the glass. It was necessary, she said. To forge my signature on a legal document giving you control of my life? I asked. To organize the paperwork, she snapped. You were a mess. Nora, you were working 60 hours a week, crying on the phone to me about your boss. You were not capable of handling the details. I worked with someone who understands these things. We set up a structure to protect you from yourself. Who? I asked. Who understands how to forge documents? She waved a hand dismissively. It is not forgery. It is stewardship. And his name is Gavin. Gavin Roque. He is a genius at this. Gavin Roque. The name from the business card. Meridian Family Capital. I said. She looked surprised that I knew the name. Yes. He helped me see the bigger picture. He explained that you were asset-rich and cash-poor, and that makes you vulnerable. He set up the trust structure. Trust structure? I asked. The Watson Legacy Trust, she said, as if it were a holy object. The house goes into the trust. I manage the trust. You live in the house. The assets are protected from creditors, from lawsuits, from your own bad decisions. And the power of attorney? I asked. Temporary, she said. Just until the transfer was done, just until you got stable. I looked at her, really looked at her. She believed it. That was the terrifying part. She wasn't wringing her hands like a villain in a movie. She was drinking tap water in my kitchen, fully convinced that stripping me of my autonomy was a moral imperative. And the money? I asked. The $150,000? Invested, she said. Gavin has a fund. High yield. It will pay the interest on the loan and generate income for you. Eventually. I have a question. Mom, I said. I kept my voice very quiet. Did you practice my signature? Or did Gavin do it? She set the glass down. Hard. I am done discussing this. Nora, you are being ungrateful. I have secured your future, and you are acting like I robbed you. You did rob me. I said, I saved you, she shouted. The sudden volume made me flinch. I saved you from being a 33-year-old secretary with a mortgage she can't afford. I am a marketing manager, I said, and I could afford it fine until you decided I couldn't. I am leaving, she said. She grabbed her purse. When you are ready to apologize and thank me, call me. Until then, stay out of my business. She stormed out. I waited until I heard her car engine fade down the street. Then I pulled the phone out of my pocket. I stopped the recording. I worked with someone who understands these things. Gavin Roque. It is not forgery. It is stewardship. I had it. I saved the file and emailed it to myself, then to Lena, then to Maya. I wasn't taking any chances with cloud syncing. The next morning, I sat in a small, cluttered office in an industrial park 3 towns over. The sign on the door read, Forensic Document Examination Services. The examiner, a man named Dr. Aris Thorne, was hunched over a microscope. He was looking at the original deed, which Lena had managed to subpoena from the county recorder's office by calling in a favor with a clerk who owed her one. It was a temporary loan of the document, supervised by a county employee who sat in the corner reading a magazine. Doctor. Thorne adjusted the focus knob. He didn't look like a scientist. He looked like a watchmaker, precise and silent. "Come look," he said. I stepped up to the microscope. He moved aside. "Look at the letter N," he said. I peered into the eyepiece. The ink, which looked smooth to the naked eye, looked like a mountain range under magnification. "Do you see the hesitation?" he asked. I looked closer. At the top of the loop in the N, the ink pooled slightly, a tiny, microscopic blob. "That is a pen lift," Thorne said, "or a hesitation mark. When you sign your own name, it is a ballistic movement, muscle memory. You do not think about the shape of the letters. You just fire. The pen moves fast. The ink flows evenly." He pointed to a screen where the image was projected. Here, the writer stopped. They paused to check the shape of the letter against a model. And here, he pointed to the tail of the W. "You see the tremor? It is called tracing pressure. The line is too heavy. They were pressing down hard, trying to control the pen. It lacks the natural variation of speed." He sat back. "It is a simulation," he said firmly, "a very good one, but a simulation. The same hand signed the deed, the payoff authorization, and the power of attorney copy you brought me. And it was not your hand. Can you testify to that?" I asked. "I can," he said. "I will write a report stating that it is highly probable the signature is not genuine. It will hold up in court." I felt a strange mix of vindication and sorrow. It was science now. It wasn't just my gut feeling. My mother had hesitated. She had paused at the top of the N to make sure she was stealing my life correctly. That afternoon, I met Lena back at her office. She looked tired. "We got a response from Juniper Title," she said, handing me a printout. I read the email. It was from a generic legal compliance address to Hartwell, Soren, Legal, regarding file 99284-W. Juniper Title. Escrow adheres to all state and federal regulations regarding identity verification and document recording. We successfully verified the identity of the signer via government-issued identification at the time of signing. Due to privacy regulations and client confidentiality, we cannot release the full transaction file without a court-ordered subpoena. We consider this matter closed. They are stonewalling. I said, "Of course they are." Lena said, "They are terrified. They verified a fake ID, Nora. Or they didn't verify anything at all." "What about the notary?" I asked. "Kendra Pike." Lena pulled another sheet of paper. Kendra Pike renewed her notary commission 6 months ago. Before that, she had a gap of 3 years where she wasn't active. Since renewing, she has notarized over 400 documents. That is a massive volume for a solo mobile notary. 400? I asked. "And here's the kicker," Lena said. "Almost all of them are for transactions involving 3 entities: Juniper Title, Stonebridge Bank, and Meridian Family Capital." I felt a chill. "It's a mill." I said, "It looks like it." Lena agreed. "Gavin Roque brings the clients, families with assets he wants to control. Stonebridge provides the liquidity, Juniper handles the paper, and Kendra stamps it all. No questions asked. This isn't just about me." I said, "No," Lena said softly. "It is a system. You just happened to get caught in the gears." I went home to an empty house. The silence was different now. It wasn't the heavy silence of fear. It was the hollow silence of grief. I sat on the floor of the living room, surrounded by the ghosts of the life I thought I had. I looked at the photos on the mantel. Me and Mom at my college graduation. Me and Mom at Disney World. Me and Mom at the closing of this house. In every picture. She was smiling. In every picture. She had her arm around me. "I did what you wouldn't," she had said. I realized then that she truly believed I was incompetent. All those years of helping, of being involved, of double-checking my choices, it wasn't love, it was a lack of faith. She didn't trust me to live my own life. She saw me as a vessel for the family legacy, a leaky vessel that needed to be patched and controlled. I felt a sob rise in my chest, a jagged, ugly thing. I let it out. I cried for the mother I wanted, the mother who would be proud that I paid my mortgage, the mother who would respect my name. But as the tears dried, Something else took their place, a cold, hard rage. She had erased me. She had looked at my autonomy and decided it was an error to be corrected. I wiped my face. I wasn't going to be erased. I remembered something. The shared technology. Elaine was terrible with tech. So years ago, I had set up an iPad for her. I had synced it with my old cloud account so I could help her troubleshoot. She barely used it, mostly for recipes and solitaire. But the calendar sometimes synced if she accepted invites on her phone. I ran upstairs to my guest room closet, digging through a box of old electronics until I found my old tablet. I plugged it in. The battery icon flashed red. I waited, sitting on the floor, watching the percent crawl up, 1%, 2%, 5%. I turned it on. It booted up, sluggish and dim. I tapped the calendar app. It updated, spinning for a moment. I scrolled back. May 12th, the day I was in Columbus. There were no entries on my calendar. I tapped calendars at the bottom and checked the box for Elaine. Home, a purple dot appeared on May 12th. I tapped it. 10 a.m. Signing appointment. Juniper title. Confidential. I stared at the screen. Confidential. She had marked it confidential on her own calendar. I tapped the event to see the details. Location, 1400 Corporate Drive, Suite 200. Notes, bring Nora's driver's license scan. Meet with Todd. I stopped breathing. Bring Nora's driver's license scan. She hadn't just forged my signature. She had brought a copy of my ID to the closing. She had premeditated the impersonation. And Todd Vance, the manager at Juniper. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't a misunderstanding. It was a conspiracy. I took a screenshot. Then I took a photo of the screen with my phone. I sat there in the dark guest room, the blue light of the tablet illuminating my face. I thought about the family she was trying to protect. If protecting the family meant destroying me, then the family didn't deserve to be saved. I stood up. I had the recording. I had the forensic report. I had the calendar invite. I wasn't just going to get my house back. I was going to burn their little stewardship scheme to the ground. The precinct station for the Caldwell County Sheriff's Department was a study in beige and fluorescent indifference. I sat on a hard plastic chair, my knees pressed together, clutching a thick manila envelope labeled Identity Theft Affidavit in black marker. Lena sat next to me, scrolling through emails on her phone, her posture erect and combative even in repose. We had been waiting for 45 minutes. Finally, a heavy door buzzed, and a man in a rumpled suit beckoned us back. Detective Miller looked like he was 3 years away from retirement and counting the minutes. His desk was buried under stacks of files, and the air in his cubicle smelled of stale coffee and copier toner. "So," he said, dropping into his chair and rubbing his eyes, "you say your mother stole your house. It is not just that I say it," I said, sliding the envelope across the scratched laminate. "The evidence is all there. The forged deed, the unauthorized mortgage payoff. The sworn statement from a forensic document examiner confirming the signature is a simulation." Miller opened the envelope and flipped through the pages with the enthusiasm of someone reading a toaster manual. He paused at the forensic report, frowned, and then kept flipping. "This is a lot of paper." "Ms. Watson," he said. "It is a lot of crime," Lena interjected sharply. "We are looking at forgery, wire fraud, grand larceny, and identity theft. We are talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars." Miller leaned back, lacing his fingers behind his head. "Here is the thing," he said, looking at me with a pitying expression that made my skin crawl. "Disputes between family members. They are messy. Usually, there is a misunderstanding. Mom thinks she is helping. Daughter gets mad about boundaries. It looks civil to me." I felt a hot flush rise up my neck. She transferred the title of my home to herself without my consent. I said, my voice trembling, "That is not a boundary issue. That is theft. If a stranger did this, you would be arresting them." "But it is not a stranger," Miller said. "It is your mother. Did you ever give her permission to handle your finances?" "Verbal permission?" "No," I said. Did she have a key to the house? Yes, but did she have access to your mail? She stole my mail, I said. Miller sighed. Look, I will file the report. I will give you a case number so you can freeze your credit. But I'm going to be honest with you. The DA hates touching these family wealth cases unless there is a smoking gun. They usually tell us to let the civil courts sort out who owns what. I looked at Lena. Her jaw was set so tight I could see the muscle feathering. We are filing the report, Lena said, her voice ice cold. And you are going to investigate, because if you don't, and this notary ring turns out to be hitting other victims, I will make sure the press knows you called it a family squabble. Miller held up his hands in surrender. I will look into it, he said. But don't expect a SWAT team to kick down her door tonight. These things take time. We walked out of the station into the blinding afternoon sun. I felt hollowed out. I had brought them the truth, wrapped in evidence, and they had looked at it and shrugged. It is civil, I repeated. The word tasting like ash. That is what he said. He is lazy, Lena said, unlocking her car. And he is wrong. But he gave us the case number. That is the key we needed to unlock the next door. What is the next door? I asked. The surveillance footage, she said. Juniper title and escrow. We need to see who walked into that closing room. I drove straight to Juniper title after leaving Lena. I knew it was a bad idea to go alone, but the rage in my chest needed an outlet. I walked into the lobby. The same gray carpet, the same receptionist who had given my mother the bagels. She looked up, saw me, and her eyes went wide. She reached for the phone. I would not do that, I said, walking up to the desk. Miss Watson, she said, her voice high and tight. You cannot be back here, Mr. Vance said. I do not care what Mr. Vance said. I interrupted. I want the security footage from May 12th. I know you have cameras. I see one right there. I pointed to the black dome in the corner of the ceiling. I want to see who sat at the table and signed my name. The door down the hall opened, and this time, Mr. Vance came out. He was a short man with a nervous energy, wearing a suit that was slightly too large for him. Ms. Watson, he said, walking toward me with his hands raised. You are trespassing. I am a victim of fraud committed in your office. I said, preserve the footage, Mr. Vance. My attorney is filing a motion as we speak. If that video is deleted, if it is lost, if the server crashes, that is spoliation of evidence, and you will go to prison. Get out, he hissed, the polite veneer dropping, or I'm calling the police. Call them, I said. I was just there. They would love to hear from you. I turned and walked out. My heart was hammering. But for the first time, I didn't feel small. I felt dangerous. That night, Maya came over. She brought a bottle of cheap wine and a box of donuts, the comfort food of our college years. We sat at my dining room table, surrounded by receipts. We have to prove you were in Columbus, Maya said, biting into a glazed donut. We have to make it undeniable. I opened my banking app. Here, I said, May 12th. I bought gas at a Sheetz in Zanesville at 8 in the morning. Maya typed it into a spreadsheet on her laptop. Okay, she said. What else? I checked into the hotel at 4. I said, that leaves a gap, Maya said. The signing was at 10 in the morning. You could have driven back. I scrolled through my transaction history. Wait, I said, Starbucks, 10:15 in the morning, in Columbus. I clicked on the transaction. It was $4.50. Do you have the receipt? Maya asked. Who keeps Starbucks receipts? I asked. The app does. Maya said, check your history in the coffee app. I opened the app on my phone. There it was. Order 442. Grande latte, 10:15 a.m., store 8839, Columbus, Ohio. Gotcha, Maya said, grinning. Unless you have a teleportation device. You were 2 hours away when Nora Watson was signing that deed. It felt absurd. My entire life, my home, my sanctuary, was being saved by a digital receipt for a latte. It was clean, unglamorous, and absolutely devastating to their timeline. I forwarded the screenshot to Lena. The next day, I had an appointment with the devil, or rather, the devil's wealth advisor. Gavin Roque had agreed to meet me. Lena had advised against it, but I insisted. I needed to look him in the eye. I needed to understand the mechanics of the trap. Meridian Family Capital was located on the top floor of a glass tower downtown. The lobby smelled of white tea and money. A receptionist who looked like a model led me to a corner office with a view of the river. Gavin Roque stood up as I entered. He was taller than I expected, with a tan that spoke of endless weekends on a golf course and a suit that cost more than my first car. "Nora," he said, extending a hand, "it is so good to finally meet you. Elaine speaks so highly of you." I ignored his hand. I sat down in the chair opposite his desk. She forged my signature. "Gavin," I said. He didn't flinch. He didn't look offended. He just smiled. A warm, patient smile that made me want to scream. "Nora," he said softly. Sitting down. "Let us not get bogged down in technicalities. We are talking about family stewardship here." The goal was asset protection. "By stealing my asset?" I asked. "By securing it," he corrected. "Your mother was acting under your wishes. She told me explicitly that you were overwhelmed with the potential layoff and wanted her to handle the restructuring." I leaned forward. "Which wishes?" I asked. "Specifically, did I wish to lose my equity? Did I wish to have a lien put on my home?" Gavin sighed, a sound of practiced disappointment. He opened a drawer and pulled out a single sheet of paper. "Look," he said, "I can see you are upset. Miscommunication happens in families. It is tragic. Really. But there is a simple fix." He slid the paper toward me. "This is a ratification agreement," he said. "It essentially says that even though you were not physically present at the signing, you approve of the action taken by your agent, your mother. You sign this. We clear up the forgery confusion, and everything stays legal. And then?" I asked. "And then, in 6 months or a year, when you are on solid footing, we reconvey the deed back to you. The trust releases the property. Simple." I looked at the paper. It was a confession. If I signed it, I was admitting that I had authorized the fraud. I would be retroactively consenting to my own robbery. And once I did that, I would have no legal standing to sue. I would be relying entirely on their goodwill to give the house back. And I knew, with a certainty that chilled my marrow, that they would never give it back. I looked up at Gavin. His eyes were crinkled at the corners, projecting empathy, but the eyes themselves were flat, dead. "You think I'm stupid," I said. "I think you are emotional," he said, "and I think you should listen to your mother. She only wants what is best for the legacy." I stood up. "The only legacy here is a felony." I said, "I am not signing that." Gavin's expression changed. The warmth evaporated. The smile vanished. For a second, I saw the irritation, the annoyance of a man who is used to women doing what they are told. Then, calculation took over. He leaned back in his chair. "That is unfortunate," he said coolly. "Litigation is so draining and public. Are you sure you want to drag your mother through the mud? The community will not look kindly on a daughter who attacks her own flesh and blood over money." I walked to the door. "It is not about money, Gavin. It is about my name." I left the office, my heart pounding. He had threatened me, not with violence, but with shame. He was betting that I would rather lose the house than look like a bad daughter. He didn't know that my mother was already playing that card. The pressure campaign started slowly. A text from my Aunt Carol. "Your mom sounds so worried about you. Please call her. She says you are having a breakdown." Then, the neighbors, Mrs. Gable, who lived across the street, stopped me while I was getting the mail. "Nora." "Honey," she said, putting a hand on my arm, "Elaine told me about your financial trouble. If you need a casserole, or just to talk, we are here for you." I stared at her. "I am not in financial trouble, Mrs. Gable." I said. She patted my arm, her eyes full of skepticism. "It is okay," she said. "There is no shame in needing help. Your mother is a saint for stepping in." I walked back to my house, shaking. Elaine was poisoning the well. She was rewriting the narrative of my life before I could even tell it. When I got to the porch, I found a small box sitting on the mat. I opened it. It was full of photos, Polaroids from the 90s, me in a kiddie pool, me blowing out candles on a birthday cake, me asleep on Elaine's lap. There was a note on top, written in her looping script. I have always caught you when you fell. Why are you fighting me now? It was weaponized tenderness. She was using the evidence of her love to justify her control. Look how small you were. The photo said, look how much you needed me. You still do. I brought the box inside and shoved it into a closet. I couldn't look at them. Every happy memory felt like a lie, a prelude to this betrayal. 2 days later, she invited me to dinner. Orchard Elm, 7 p.m., just us. Please, I shouldn't have gone. Lena told me not to go. Maya told me to block her number. But I went, because I needed to look her in the face. I needed to see if there was anything left of the mother I thought I had. Orchard Elm was a farm-to-table place with Edison bulbs and reclaimed wood tables. It was loud, the clatter of silverware and conversation providing a layer of cover. Elaine was already seated at a booth in the back. She looked immaculate, wearing a silk scarf and sipping a Pinot Grigio. She didn't look like a criminal. She looked like the president of the PTA. Nora, she said, smiling as I sat down. You look tired. Are you eating enough? Cut the crap. Mom, I said, I didn't unfold my napkin. I'm not here for small talk. I met Gavin. She took a sip of wine. He is charming, isn't he? He thinks very highly of you. He said you were spirited. He tried to get me to sign a ratification. I said, he tried to trick me into signing away my rights. He offered you a peace treaty. Elaine said. She reached into her tote bag. I brought something. She said, I want you to see why I had to do this. She pulled out a folder. It wasn't the deed. It wasn't legal paperwork. It was labeled, in red marker, Nora's debts. I stared at it. What is that? I asked. She opened it. This, she said, pointing to a credit card statement. You spent $2,000 on a vet bill for that cat last year. And this, she pointed to a medical bill. Your therapy copays. You missed 2 payments in 2023. And here, student loans. You're only paying the minimum. I felt the blood drain from my face. These were private documents. The credit card statement was from a card I had paperless billing for, the medical bill. How do you have these? I whispered. I told you, she said calmly. I monitor things. I have my ways. You leave your mail out when I visit. You leave your laptop open. She wasn't just intercepting the deed. She had been spying on me for years, collecting data, building a dossier of my imperfections. You missed 2 copays. Nora, she said, tapping the paper. 2, that is a sign of executive dysfunction. You are drowning. I could see it. I couldn't let you lose the house because you forgot to open an envelope. I looked at the papers. The debts were normal. A vet emergency, therapy, student loans. I had a credit score of 780. I wasn't drowning. I was living, but she didn't see it that way. To her, any imperfection, any struggle, was proof that I was incompetent, proof that I needed a conservator. You built a story, I said, my voice rising. People turned to look. I didn't care. You decided I was failing so you could feel like a hero for saving me. But I wasn't failing. Mom, I was fine. You were not fine, she hissed, leaning across the table. You are single. You are 33. You have no husband to look after you. You are alone. Nora, I am the only one who cares enough to handle the hard things. I realized then, with a clarity that cut through the shame like a laser, that this wasn't about money. It wasn't even about the house. It was about her terror. The terror that I might not need her. The terror that I might be a separate, functioning human being if I was competent. She was obsolete, so she had to make me incompetent. I stood up. I grabbed the folder. This is mine. I said, I am not finished. She said, I am. I said, I am taking this, and I'm adding it to the evidence file. Because stealing mail is a federal crime. Mom, And you just handed me the proof. I walked out of the restaurant. I left her sitting there, her mouth open, her perfectly constructed narrative beginning to fray at the edges. I drove home, shaking. The shame she had tried to plant in me, the shame of the vet bill, the shame of the therapy, was burning off. It was being replaced by cold, hard resolve. My phone buzzed. It was Lena. Check your email. The text read, "We got the ID scan from the title company." I pulled into my driveway and ran inside. I opened my laptop. The email from Lena had an attachment. Identification_verification_Watson, PDF. I opened it. It was a scan of a driver's license. It had my name. It had my address. It had my birth date. But the photo, I zoomed in. It was me. But it wasn't me. The hair was slightly different, parted on the left, not the right. The chin was sharper. The eyes were spaced just a fraction of a millimeter too wide. It was a manipulation. Someone had taken an old photo of me, maybe from social media, and digitally altered it to bypass a facial recognition scan? And the thought made me sick, it was someone who looked enough like me to pass at a glance. I remembered the cousin Elaine used to talk about, a second cousin on her father's side. I had never met her. I stared at the face that was mine, but not mine. This was the face that had stolen my life. The front door opened. I slammed the laptop shut. Elaine stood in the doorway. She must have followed me from the restaurant. She didn't have the Nora's debts folder anymore. She just had her purse and a look of terrifying calm. "You made a scene," she said, closing the door behind her. "You stole my mail." I said, "You stalked me." "I protected you," she repeated, like a mantra. She walked into the living room. She didn't sit down. She stood in the center of the rug, looking around the room as if she were appraising it for an estate sale. "You are going to stop this. Nora," she said. "You are going to call that lawyer and tell her it was a misunderstanding. You are going to sign the ratification with Gavin." "Or what?" I asked. She turned to me. Her eyes were empty of the warmth I had spent my life trying to earn. "If you fight me," she said quietly, "you will lose more than a house. I will expose everything, your medical records, your instability. I will make sure you never work in this town again. I will make sure everyone knows you are a mental case who attacked her own mother." The threat hung in the air. It was the nuclear option. She was willing to burn my reputation to ash to keep her control. I looked at her. I saw the fear behind the threat. She was terrified. She was cornered. I took a step toward her. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. "Then tell me," I said, my voice steady and low. "Tell me what else you already took." She blinked. "Because you didn't just take the house," I said. "You took my history. You took my privacy. You took my trust. So go ahead. Expose me. Tell the world I go to therapy. Tell the world I have student loans. I don't care anymore." I walked to the door and opened it. "Get out," I said. Elaine stared at me. For the first time in my life, she didn't look like the giant who blocked out the sun. She looked small, vicious, but small. She walked to the door. As she passed me, she paused. "You are making a mistake," she whispered. "You are going to be very lonely." "I am already lonely," I said, "but at least I am real." She stepped out into the night. I slammed the door and locked it. Then I slid the deadbolt. Then I wedged the chair. I turned back to the empty room. I was shaking, but I wasn't afraid. I knew what I had to do. I had to find the woman in the ID photo. I had to find the ghost who wore my face, and I knew exactly where to start looking. The family inheritance she had mentioned in part 1. The money she used to pay off the mortgage. If she lied about the house, she lied about the money. And if I followed the money, it would lead me to the truth she was desperate to hide. The stack of paper on Lena Hartwell's desk was 3 inches thick. It smelled of toner and triumph. We had finally forced Juniper Title and Escrow to crack. The subpoena had hit them like a battering ram. And rather than risk a contempt charge, they had dumped the entire file into Lena's secure server. I sat in the leather chair, my hands clasped so tightly that my knuckles were white. "It is all here." "Nora," Lena said, Her voice was grim. Lacking the usual satisfaction of a lawyer who has found the smoking gun, it is worse than we thought. She slid a stapled packet across the mahogany surface. "Read the emails," she said. "Top page." I looked down. The email header was mundane, a standard Outlook format. From Todd Vance to Vance, Juniper Title, com, to Elaine Watson, Watson, 55 Gmail. Com subject, Rush recording. 42. Briar Glen date, May 10th, 11:42 a.m. I read the body of the email. "Elaine, we can accommodate the expedited timeline. I have the notary, Kendra, on standby for the 12th. Regarding your request for discretion, we will flag the file as no borrower contact, given the sensitive family nature of the transaction and the daughter's health issues. We will route all confirmation calls directly to your cell. Please ensure you bring the ID scan as discussed." I felt the air leave the room. The daughter's health issues. I looked up at Lena. She told them I was sick. I whispered, "Read the next one," Lena said. From Elaine Watson, Todd Vance. Subject, Rush recording. 42 Briar Glen. Thank you. Todd, it is vital that Nora is not disturbed during this process. She is very fragile right now, and the stress of paperwork triggers her episodes. I am doing this to save her from herself. I appreciate you keeping this between us until the trust is settled. Triggers her episodes. I did not have episodes. I had anxiety, which I managed with running and occasional therapy, mostly to deal with the stress of having a mother who treated me like a china doll she desperately wanted to break so she could glue me back together. She made me sound incompetent. I said, my voice was flat. She turned fraud into a mercy mission, and Todd Vance bought it, Lena said, or he pretended to buy it because he wanted the fees. Look at the bottom of the file. There is an internal note. I flipped to the last page. It was a screenshot of their case management software. In the notes field, typed in all caps, client requests no direct contact with grantor. Family matter. Youth by MGR TV. Do not call home number. They treated my rights like a preference, I said, like asking for a window seat on a plane. They broke the law, Lena said firmly. A title company has a fiduciary duty to verify the intent of the grantor. You cannot just take a mother's word that her adult daughter is too fragile to confirm she is selling her house. This is negligence at best, and conspiracy at worst. She took the file back and added it to a growing stack. I filed the civil suit this morning, she said. I nodded. It felt abstract. A suit, a filing, words on paper. We are suing to quiet title, Lena explained. That asks the court to void the deed and declare you the sole owner. We are also suing for conversion, fraud, and civil conspiracy, and we are seeking an injunction to freeze the home equity line of credit immediately. What about Stonebridge? I asked. The bank. I sent a copy of the filing to their general counsel an hour ago. Lena said, a small, shark-like smile touching her lips. You would be amazed how quickly a bank moves when they realize their collateral is radioactive. They are going to launch an internal investigation. The days of people not calling you back are over. I left Lena's office feeling heavier, not lighter. The truth was out, but it was ugly. It wasn't just that my mother had stolen from me. It was that she had constructed a parallel reality where I was broken and she was the savior, and she had sold that reality to a title manager, a notary, and a banker, and they had all nodded and signed the line. I drove to the police station. Detective Miller had asked me to come back if I had anything concrete. I had a mountain of concrete. I sat at his desk again. The pile of files was still there, but Miller looked more awake this time. He was looking at the report from the forensic document examiner. Dr. Thorne, simulated signature. Miller read, tracing the line with a thick finger, consistent with tracing. He looked at the travel receipts Maya had helped me compile. The Starbucks receipt from Columbus, the hotel folio. And you have this email? He asked. The one where she tells the title guy not to call you? I handed him the copy. He read it. He read it twice. Then he let out a long, slow whistle. This is not a civil dispute, he said. No, I said. It is not. Miller leaned back in his chair, the springs groaning. We have had other complaints, he said quietly, about that notary, Kendra Pike. Usually it is elderly people, seniors whose kids say they signed over the house before they got dementia. We always wrote it off as probate drama. But you are 33, you are sound of mind, and you were in Ohio. He looked at me, and for the first time, I saw a flicker of genuine police instinct in his eyes. If Pike is notarizing fake signatures for your mom, she is doing it for others. And if this Juniper title guy is approving it, it is a ring. I said. Miller nodded. I am opening a criminal file, he said. Grand larceny, forgery in the first degree, identity theft. I need to talk to the DA. But this has teeth. I walked out of the station. I should have felt vindicated. Instead, I felt a deep, pervasive sadness. My mother was going to be investigated for a felony. I had pulled the thread, and the whole sweater was unraveling. When I got home, there was a letter in my mailbox. The return address was the law office of Marcel Klein. I didn't know the name. I tore it open standing in the driveway. Dear Ms. Watson, please be advised that this firm represents Elaine Watson in her capacity as trustee of the Watson Legacy Trust. We are in receipt of your recent communications regarding the property at 42 Briar Glen Lane. Your mother's actions were undertaken as a temporary protective measure, pursuant to her role as de facto guardian of the family estate. Given your history of financial vulnerability and recent personal instability, Mrs. Watson acted to secure the asset from potential creditor claims. She considers herself a temporary trustee holding the property for your ultimate benefit. We urge you to cease your harassment of Mrs. Watson and engage in a constructive dialogue about the terms of your continued occupancy. Any further defamatory statements regarding fraud or theft will be met with swift legal action. I lowered the letter. Financial vulnerability, personal instability, de facto guardian. He hadn't said crazy. He hadn't said incompetent, but he had danced right up to the line. He was framing her crime as a necessity. He was trying to gaslight me legally. I walked inside and sat on my couch. I looked at the walls. For my entire life. Elaine had told me I was forgetful. You would lose your head if it wasn't attached. Nora, let me handle the taxes. You know how numbers confuse you. Are you sure you want that job? It seems like a lot of pressure for you. I had believed her. I had spent 33 years double-checking my own memories, apologizing for mistakes I wasn't sure I had made, leaning on her because I thought I was fundamentally flawed. But I looked at the papers spread out on my coffee table, the emails, the receipts, the forensic report. I wasn't forgetful. I wasn't unstable. I was organized. I was thorough. I had caught them. The realization washed over me like cold water. I wasn't the broken one. I never had been. She had needed me to be broken so she could be the glue. She had crippled my confidence to ensure her own relevance. I felt a sob rise in my throat. But it wasn't from fear. It was from grief. I was mourning the years I had spent doubting my own mind. My phone rang. It was Lena. Stonebridge froze the line of credit. She said without preamble, "That is good, right?" I asked. "It is," Lena said. "But there is a problem. The $150,000? It is gone." "What do you mean, gone?" I asked. "I mean drawn down," Lena said. 2 days after the loan funded, your mother wired $140,000 to an entity called MFC Holdings, LLC, MFC, Meridian Family Capital. I said. "Exactly," Lena said. "We traced the LLC. It is registered in Delaware, but the mailing address matches Gavin Roque's office. She gave the money to him." I whispered. "She didn't invest it," Lena said. "She handed it over." "Nora, this isn't just about control. Your mother might be the victim of a scam. Even while she is victimizing you, Gavin Roque convinced her to liquidate your equity and give it to him." My head was spinning. Elaine thought she was the master of the universe, moving pieces on a board to protect the family, but she was just a pawn. Gavin had used her desire for control to steal her blind. I hung up. I stared at the phone. Then it rang again. Unknown caller. I usually let those go to voicemail. Today. I answered. This is Nora. I said, Nora. Hello. It is Gavin. Gavin Roque. His voice was smooth, warm, like expensive bourbon. It made my skin crawl. Do not talk to me. I said, my attorney. Please. Nora. He interrupted, his voice dropping to a confidential whisper. Let us leave the lawyers out of this for a moment. They just complicate things. I am calling with an olive branch. I said nothing. I hit the record button on my screen. I understand there is some friction regarding the title work, Gavin said, and I understand you have filed a lawsuit. That is very aggressive. Nora, it is going to hurt your mother deeply. You have my money. Gavin. I said, $140,000. I have funds under management. He corrected. For the trust. But listen, I have a proposal. We want to make you whole. I waited. If you agree to sign a confidentiality agreement, a standard non-disclosure regarding our business practices, and dismiss the lawsuit against Meridian and your mother, we will assist in the reconveyance. We will put the deed back in your name. We will even pay off the HELOC. He was buying my silence. He knew the police were looking. He knew the email trail at Juniper was damning. He wanted to bury it before it blew up his operation. And if I don't? I asked. Gavin sighed. Then the bank will foreclose. Nora, if you sue us, the assets freeze. Your mother cannot make the payments. Stonebridge will call the note. You will lose the house anyway. And your mother? Well, a woman of her age in prison? It would kill her. Do you want that on your conscience? He was holding my mother hostage. The mother who had stolen my house. You are scared. I said, I am pragmatic. Gavin said, be pragmatic. Nora, sign the NDA. Get your house back. Go back to your life. Forget this ever happened. I will think about it. I lied. I hung up. I didn't want to go back to my life. My life was a lie. I wanted the truth. I needed to see her, one last time, before the police came, before the bank lawyers descended. I needed to hear it from her, without Gavin whispering in her ear, without the lawyers filtering the words. I texted her, come over. I will send the police away if you come now. Just us. It was a bluff. I couldn't send the police away, but I knew she would come. She still believed she could manage me. She arrived 20 minutes later. She looked older. The polish was chipping. Her hair was pulled back in a severe bun, and her eyes were rimmed with red. She walked into the living room and sat on the edge of the armchair, refusing to look at me. You caused a lot of trouble. Nora, she said. Her voice was brittle. Marcel says you are being vindictive. I sat on the coffee table, facing her. I was 2 feet away. I saw the emails. Mom, I said. She flinched. I saw where you told Todd Vance I was fragile. I saw where you told him I had episodes. I did it to protect your privacy, she said automatically. Stop, I said. It wasn't a shout. It was a command. Stop lying. The paper trail is out. The police have it. Lena has it. She looked at me then, real fear in her eyes. The police? She whispered. Detective Miller is opening a grand larceny case. I said, and Gavin Roque? He just offered to buy me off. He has the money. Mom, the money you stole from my house. He has it in an LLC. She shook her head. No, she said. It is invested. It is for the legacy. It is gone. I said, he is a con artist, and you are his mark, and you made me a victim to satisfy him. She stared at me, her mouth working silently. The reality was cracking the shell. I have one question. I said, and if you lie to me, I will never speak to you again. I will let them arrest you, and I won't even visit. I took a breath. Was any of this about me? I asked. Was any part of this actually about helping me? Or was it just about you needing to feel like you owned me? The room was silent. The clock on the wall ticked. Elaine looked at her hands. She twisted the gold ring on her finger. When she looked up, her face was stripped bare. The warmth was gone. The concern was gone. There was only a cold, hard pragmatism. You were drifting away, she said. Her voice was steady. You were getting independent. You stopped asking for my advice. You stopped needing me. And, I asked, and you are messy. Nora, she said, you are emotional. You would have ruined it eventually. You would have married the wrong man, or sold the house for a loss, or wasted the equity. So you stole it. I said, I secured it. She said, it was about keeping control. Before you ruined everything, there it was. The truth. It wasn't love. It wasn't protection. It was a preemptive strike against my independence. She would rather see me destroyed and under her thumb than successful and out of her reach. Thank you. I said, for what? She asked. For finally respecting me enough to tell me the truth. I stood up. You should go, I said. She stood up, smoothing her skirt. She looked around the room, as if she were still measuring it for curtains. You will sign Gavin's deal, she said. It is the only way to save the house. I am not signing anything. I said, then you will lose it, she said. And you will have nothing, and you will come back to me. You always do. She walked out the door. I locked it behind her. I felt lightheaded. The cord was cut. She had said the quiet part out loud, and in doing so, she had set me free. I went to the kitchen to pour a glass of water. On the counter, amidst the pile of mail I had brought in earlier but hadn't opened, was a thin envelope. It looked official. I picked it up. The addressee window read, Elaine Watson, owner, 42 Briar Glen Lane. I tore it open. It was from a third-party verification service, contracted by Stonebridge Bank. Notice of owner occupancy verification. Dear Mrs. Baas Watson, as a condition of your recent financing agreement, you certified that the property at 42 Briar Glen Lane is your primary residence. We have scheduled an on-site verification for May 28th to confirm occupancy. Please ensure you are present at the property to avoid default. I stared at the letter. She had checked the box. She had sworn to the bank that she lived here, that I didn't exist, or that I was just a tenant. And now, the bank was coming to check. If she wasn't here, they would call the loan. If she was here, she would have to pretend this was her house. She was preparing to move in, or she was preparing to kick me out. The system didn't know I was the victim. The system only knew that Elaine Watson was the owner, and she needed to be home. I looked around my kitchen, my sage green walls, my granite island. She had told me I would lose more than a house. She was right. I was losing the very ground beneath my feet, but she was wrong about one thing. I wasn't going to come back to her. I picked up the phone and dialed Lena. They are coming to verify occupancy. I said, who? Lena asked. The bank? I said, on May 28th. Okay, Lena said. We need an injunction before then. No, I said, a cold plan forming in my mind. What do you mean, no? Lena asked. Let them come, I said. Let them come and see who really lives here. I hung up. I wasn't going to hide. I wasn't going to sign Gavin's NDA. I was going to stand in my doorway, and I was going to force them to look at me. Elaine wanted control? She wanted to be the owner? Fine. Let her try to explain me to the bank. I walked to the front door and looked at the locks. I needed to change them. Again, this war wasn't over. It was just moving from the paperwork to the pavement. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't afraid to fight dirty. The fluorescent lights of the Caldwell County Recorder's office hummed with a sound that felt like a drill pressing directly into my temple. It was 8:30 in the morning. I had been standing at the counter for 20 minutes, watching Patricia, the clerk with the weary eyes, type slowly into her terminal. I was there to file 3 more affidavits of fraud. Lena had told me to flood the zone. Every day the deed remained in Elaine's name was a day she could borrow more, sell more, or destroy more. Patricia stopped typing. She squinted at the screen, then pushed her glasses up her nose. Hun, she said, her voice dropping to that hushed register people use for cancer diagnoses and tax audits. You might want to see this. See what? I asked. My stomach did a slow, sick roll. There is a document in the queue, she said. It came in electronically late yesterday. It is pending review. So it is not officially recorded yet, but it is in the system. She turned the monitor slightly so I could see. Instrument type: Deed of Trust / Transfer into Trust. Grantor: Elaine Watson. Grantee: The Watson Legacy Trust. Elaine Watson. Trustee. Type: Irrevocable. I stared at the word, irrevocable. I knew enough about estate law from my late-night panic scrolling to know what that meant. A revocable trust could be changed. You could take assets in and out. An irrevocable trust was a vault. Once the house went in, it didn't come out. It was no longer property. It was an entity. And Elaine was the trustee, if this recorded. I wouldn't just be fighting to get my name back on a deed. I would be fighting to dissolve a legal fortress designed to be permanent. It is going to record by noon, Patricia said, looking at me with genuine sympathy. Unless a judge stops it. I did not say thank you. I turned and ran. I called Lena from the parking lot. My hands shaking so hard I dropped the phone twice before dialing. She is moving it. I shouted the second she picked up. She is moving the house into an irrevocable trust. Today, noon. I heard the sound of a chair scraping back and the rustle of paper. I am filing an emergency ex parte motion, Lena said, her voice shifting instantly into war mode. Meet me at the Superior Court in 45 minutes. Do not go to work. Do not pass go. Bring the ID scan and the email chain. I drove to the courthouse like a criminal, running 2 yellow lights. The building was a brutalist slab of concrete that looked designed to crush the spirit. I met Lena on the steps. She was already on the phone with the court clerk, demanding a slot on the emergency docket. She hung up and looked at me. Judge Holloway gave us 10 minutes. She said, "He is eating his lunch. We have to make this count." The courtroom was empty save for the bailiff and a court reporter who looked like she would rather be anywhere else. Judge Holloway sat on the bench, a sandwich half eaten on a napkin to his left. He was an older man with a face carved from granite and skepticism. Elaine was there. She sat at the defense table with a man I assumed was Marcel Klein. He was slick, wearing a suit that cost more than my car. With a smile that looked surgically attached, Elaine looked perfect. She wore a navy dress, pearls, and an expression of bewildered sorrow, as if she were the one being dragged through a nightmare. She did not look at me. "Ms. Hartwell," the judge said, wiping crumbs from his lip. "You are asking me to enjoin a property transfer based on allegations of fraud. That is a high bar. Why should I interfere with a mother settling her estate? Because it is not her estate." "Your Honor," Lena said, her voice ringing clear in the hollow room. "It is the plaintiff's home, and the defendant is attempting to wash the title through a trust to bury the evidence of her theft." Marcel Klein stood up. "Your Honor, this is a family dispute. My client, Mrs. Watson, holds valid title. She is simply engaged in prudent estate planning. The plaintiff is emotionally volatile and is lashing out because of a personal disagreement." The judge looked at me. "Ms. Watson," he said, "not Lena, me. Stand up," he ordered. I stood. My legs felt like water. "You are alleging that you did not sign the deed transferring this property to your mother." The judge said, "I did not." I said, "And yet," he said, picking up a file, "I have a notarized document here. A notary is an officer of the state. Are you saying the notary is lying?" "Yes," I said. "And the title company?" "Yes." "And your mother?" I took a breath. The air in the room tasted like floor wax and old fear. I looked at Elaine. She was staring straight ahead, refusing to acknowledge my existence. "Your Honor," I said. My voice was small, so I made it louder. "I worked for 7 years to buy that house. I saved every dollar. I signed the mortgage papers with a hand that was shaking because I was so proud. When I saw that deed, it wasn't just that I lost the asset, it was that I saw my name, my identity, used to erase me. I gripped the table. Betrayal does not always look like violence," I said. "It does not always look like a gun or a bruise. Sometimes it looks like a mother's smile." Sometimes it looks like her bringing you groceries while she steals your future. She told everyone I was incompetent. She told the bank I was crazy. She did not just take my house, Your Honor, she took my voice. Please, do not let her lock it away where I can never get it back." The room was silent. Judge Holloway looked at me for a long moment. Then he looked at Marcel Klein. "Call the title officer," the judge said. Todd Vance took the stand. He looked sweaty. He kept adjusting his tie. "Mr. Vance?" Lena asked, pacing in front of him. "Did you ever speak to Nora Watson? We handle a high volume of files." Todd stammered. "My team handles the intake. Did you speak to her?" Lena pressed. "No," he admitted. "Did anyone in your office speak to her?" "We received the documents," Todd said defensively. "They were signed. We followed protocol." Lena held up a piece of paper. "Is this your internal case note?" she asked. Todd squinted at it. "Yes," he said. "Read it," Lena commanded. "Client requests no borrower calls." Todd read, his voice barely a whisper. "Family matter." "So," Lena said, leaning in, "you had a transfer of title where the seller was never contacted, never spoken to, and the buyer explicitly instructed you to keep it secret, and you call that protocol?" We try to accommodate client needs," Todd said weakly. The judge made a noise in his throat. It sounded like a growl. "Get down," the judge said. Todd scrambled off the stand. Kendra Pike was next, the notary. She looked terrified. She was wearing a cardigan that was buttoned wrong. "Ms. Pike," Lena said, "you notarized this deed on May 12th. "Yes," Kendra said. "I did. Where did the signing take place?" At the title office." Kendra said, "And Nora Watson was there?" "Yes," Kendra said. "She was there. I verified her ID." Lena walked to the projector table. She placed the Starbucks receipt on the glass. "This is a digital receipt from a coffee shop in Columbus, Ohio," Lena said. "Dated May 12th, at 10:15 in the morning, 200 miles away from your office." Kendra blinked. "Machines can be wrong," she said. Lena switched the document. She put up the ID scan. "And this," Lena said. "This is the ID you accepted. Look at the eyes. Ms. Pike, look at the chin." Kendra stared at the screen. "I see a driver's license," she said stubbornly. "I see a resemblance. You see a fraud." Lena said, "You see a woman who looks like Nora Watson if you squint, or if you are paid enough not to look closely. How many documents have you notarized for Meridian Family Capital this year?" "Ms. Pike?" "Objection," Marcel Klein shouted. "Relevance. It goes to credibility." "Your Honor," Lena shouted back. "We have reason to believe this witness is a rubber stamp for a predatory lending scheme." "Overruled," the judge barked. "Answer the question." Kendra started to cry. It wasn't a sympathetic cry. It was the cry of someone who realizes the walls are closing in. "It is routine," she sobbed. "They bring me the papers. I sign them. It is just paper. I didn't know anyone was getting hurt." "You didn't know?" the judge asked. "You are a notary. Your entire job is to know." He waved her away. "Mrs. Watson," the judge said, "take the stand." Elaine stood up. She smoothed her skirt. She walked to the witness box with the dignity of a queen ascending a throne. She sat down and looked at the judge with wide, trusting eyes. "Mrs. Watson," Marcel Klein said gently, "did you steal this house?" "Absolutely not," Elaine said. Her voice was calm, melodic. "I love my daughter. Nora has been struggling. She was facing financial ruin. I stepped in to save the asset. I paid off her mortgage with my own inheritance. I did this to ensure she would always have a home." "And the signature?" Marcel asked. Elaine sighed, a tragic, long-suffering sigh. "Nora authorized me to handle the paperwork," she said. "She gave me power of attorney. She asked me to take the burden off her shoulders. If there are irregularities in the signatures, it is because I was trying to execute her wishes as efficiently as possible." Lena stood up. She didn't walk to the podium. She stood right at her table. "Mrs. Watson, Lena said. If you were executing her wishes, why did you send this email? Lena held up the paper. Subject: R.E. Rush recording. Text: It is vital that Nora is not disturbed. She is very fragile. I am doing this to save her from herself. Elaine froze. If she agreed to this, Lena asked, why did you have to hide it from her? Why did you forbid the title company from calling her? Elaine looked at the paper. She looked at me. For a second, the mask slipped. I saw the rage. I saw the absolute fury that I had dared to outsmart her. She was confused. Elaine said coldly, She forgets things. I didn't want to upset her. You didn't want to get caught. Lena said, Objection! Marcel screamed. The judge slammed his gavel. It sounded like a gunshot. Enough, he said. He looked at Elaine. Mrs. Watson, you are barely credible. You are sitting here telling me you forged a deed to help a daughter you then actively silenced. He looked at the papers. I am granting the temporary restraining order, effective immediately. No assets are to be transferred into the Watson Legacy Trust. No further liens are to be recorded. He looked at Marcel Klein. And regarding possession, Mrs. Watson is hereby enjoined from entering the property at 42 Briar Glen Lane. She is enjoined from harassing the plaintiff. Thank you, Your Honor, Lena said. And the title? Will you void the deed? The judge hesitated. He rubbed his temples. I cannot void a recorded deed in an ex parte hearing, he said. We need a full trial on the merits. We need to adjudicate the fraud claim. For now, the deed stands in Elaine Watson's name, but she cannot act on it. So I am a tenant? I asked, speaking out of turn. You are the occupant. Ms. Watson, the judge said gently. Possession is 9/10 of the law. Keep possession. We will set a trial date for September. September, 4 months away. 4 months of living in a house that belonged to my mother on paper. The court adjourned. I walked out of the courtroom feeling like I had run a marathon. I had won, but I hadn't won. I was in limbo. Elaine swept past me in the hallway, flanked by Marcel. She didn't look at me. She looked straight ahead, her face set in a rictus of determination. She wasn't done. I knew she wasn't done. I walked toward the exit. The adrenaline was fading, leaving me shaking and cold. Nora. The voice came from a pillar near the security checkpoint. I turned. Gavin Roque was leaning against the marble column. He wasn't wearing a suit today. He was wearing a polo shirt and slacks, looking like a dad at a soccer game. It made him more terrifying. You made a lot of noise in there, he said. His voice was low, barely audible over the chatter of the lobby. I got the restraining order. I said, paper, he said dismissively. It is just paper. He pushed off the pillar and took a step toward me. He didn't invade my personal space, but the threat radiated off him like heat. You are tugging a thread you don't understand. Nora, he said. What does that mean? I asked. It means this isn't just about your little colonial in the suburbs, he said. You think you are fighting your mother. You are not. You are fighting a machine, an ecosystem. He smiled. It was a dead smile. We have clients who value discretion above all else, clients who have used these services to streamline their family affairs. If you keep pulling this thread, if you keep dragging names like Kendra Pike and Todd Vance into the light, you are going to expose people who do not like to be exposed. Are you threatening me? I asked. I am giving you advice, he said. Take the settlement. Sign the NDA. Let us fix the title quietly. If you force this to trial, if you make this public, the system will chew you up. I looked at him. I thought about the ID scan. The woman who looked like me but wasn't me. Who is she? I asked. The woman in the ID? Who is she? Gavin's eyes narrowed. She is nobody. He said, just like you will be if you don't stop. He turned and walked away, disappearing into the crowd. I drove home. I needed to be in my house. I needed to touch the walls and verify that I still existed. I pulled into the driveway. Elaine's car wasn't there. But something was different. The front door, the brass handle I had polished 100 times, looked Newer, shiny. I walked up the steps. I slid my key into the lock. It didn't turn. I tried again. I jiggled it. I pulled it out and flipped it over. It didn't fit. She had changed the locks. While we were in court, while she was sitting there playing the victim, she had someone here, a locksmith, or maybe Gavin's people. I felt a surge of rage so pure it blinded me for a second. This was my house. The judge had just said I had possession. I didn't call the locksmith. I walked to the back of the house. There was a window in the laundry room. The latch was broken. I had been meaning to fix it for 2 years. Elaine had nagged me about it constantly. "You are inviting burglars." "Nora." I pushed the screen up. It groaned. I wedged my fingers under the sash and heaved. It slid open. I climbed through the window, tumbling over the washing machine and landing on the linoleum floor. I scraped my shin, but I didn't care. I was inside. The house was silent, but it felt violated. I walked to the front door and unlocked it from the inside. I threw it open. I stood there, breathing heavy, staring at the suburban street. "I am here!" I screamed. Mrs. Gable, across the street, looked up from her gardening. She stared at me. "I am here!" I yelled again. "And I'm not leaving!" I slammed the door. I went to the kitchen and grabbed a chair. I wedged it under the knob. Then I went to the garage and got a hammer. I didn't know what I was going to do with it, but I carried it with me to the living room. My phone rang. It was Lena. "Are you safe?" she asked. "I am inside." I said, "She changed the locks." "Lena, she locked me out. That violates the order." Lena said, "We can have her held in contempt, but listen to me. I have news." "What?" I asked. "The money." Lena said, "The $140,000 she wired to MFC Holdings. Yeah? Stonebridge's fraud department traced it. They got a subpoena for the receiving bank. And? It didn't go to an investment account. Nora, it went to a shell company in the Caymans. And from there? It was split. Split how? Half went to an account we think belongs to Gavin Roque. But the other half? It went to a holding company called Blue Heron Assets. I don't know what that is." I said, "Neither did I." Lena said, "Until I ran a search on the corporate registration. Blue Heron Assets lists a registered agent." "Who?" "Marcel Klein?" Lena said. "Her lawyer?" I asked. "Her lawyer." Lena confirmed, "Nora, your mother isn't just a client. She is being bled. Her own lawyer and her financial advisor are splitting the equity they convinced her to steal from you. She is not the mastermind. She is the bagman." I sat down on the floor, the hammer heavy in my lap. "She thinks she is in control." I whispered, "She is the mark." Lena said, "They found a woman with a hero complex and a need for control, and they weaponized her against her own daughter so they could strip the equity. If the bank forecloses, they keep the cash, and your mother is left with the debt and the guilt." I closed my eyes. "She did it to herself." I said, "She did." Lena said, "But now we know why Gavin is so scared. It is a laundering scheme, and you just lit a flare in the middle of it." I hung up. The house was dark now. The sun had gone down. I sat there, listening to the creaks and groans of the settling timber. I thought about Elaine. I thought about her sitting in that courtroom, looking so proud, so certain of her righteousness. She thought she was the matriarch protecting the legacy. In reality, she was just another victim, too arrogant to see the knife in her back. But that didn't change what she had done to me. It didn't change the locks. It didn't change the deed. I looked at the hammer in my lap. Gavin had said I was tugging a thread. He was right. I stood up. I walked to the window. I looked out at the dark street. I wasn't just going to tug the thread. I was going to rip the whole tapestry down. I was going to save my house. And in doing so, I was going to destroy the only thing my mother had left, her delusion that she was the one in charge. Thank you so much for listening to A Paid in Full Notice Hit My Mortgage. This story of betrayal, bureaucracy, and the terrifying fragility of identity has been a journey to write, and I hope it resonated with you. I would love to hear your thoughts. Where are you listening from? Have you ever had a moment where you realized the people supposed to protect you were the ones you needed protection from? Please leave a comment below in English. And don't forget to subscribe to Revenge Stories for more tales of justice, retribution, and the long road to reclaiming the truth. Until next time.